1. Peeps, what is the beef? Episode 60. Jeez. Episode
Ow!
60. You know it, son. Sheffield Podcast. Take responsibility of it if you want it. That's today's episode. And yeah, fuck. We're on an old centennial 60 episodes, man. It's pretty mental.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
how about we celebrate our 60th by me telling you, giving you the information that last night I sold the podcast to Spotify for 100 million euros.
Fucking old Rogan. Jesus.
We're going
God.
exclusive.
That's fucking some crack. How did he manage to suss that? I wonder. Or sorry, not that how did he manage.
He held out, like, so you have like the likes of Taylor Swift who said, right, I'm going to take everything off of Spotify if you don't bring up the CPM for people that are, that aren't selling lots, people that aren't big, for new artists and stuff like that, because new artists had absolutely no way of getting played on Spotify, right? So she said, right, well, I'm going to take everything out. And they said, no, you can't take everything out. And she said, well, okay, see you later. I'm going to doing that, Jay-Z and also D's or whatever it was. And they said, no, come back. And she's like, actually, no, you know what? I don't think I'm going to come back unless you give me all the shmonies. So they gave her all the shmoney. If you go onto Spotify now to listen to Joe Rogan, it's only if somebody has made clips from episodes, 10-minute clips, and put that into a playlist. You can't go and listen to it. Like today, Tony Hawk was on Joe Rogan today. You can't go listen to that on Spotify. It's just not there. And the reason for that is he chose not to put it there because he thought someday I'm going to get 100 million fucking shmonies, 100 million sheets for exclusive rights, for licensing, as he said.
Mad. So he's still uploading as it was. Like if that goes on Spotify, can you get video on Spotify? You can't, can you?
Not at the moment, no. So only by the end of the year, only clips will be going onto YouTube.
Right.
But
yeah.
For the 1st of September, the full version will be moving to Spotify, and then by the end of December, it won't be available anywhere else.
He's a fucking unassuming man, old Rogan. You wouldn't think that he's that fucking
100 million. 100 million. I love that. That. I don't listen to podcasts on Spotify. Now I will, because he's one of the top 3 podcasts that I listen to. Yeah. And when I'm there, there's more advertising, there's more people that are going to subscribe, and it obviously makes good sense for Spotify to do that because they want to corner the podcast market. Yeah. And nobody has more listeners or subscribers to podcasts than Joe Rogan. And a lot of people that listen to Joe Rogan listen to lots of other podcasts. Yeah. And that's where all the money is. And when there's more listeners, there's got to be more subscribers. There's got to be more advertising money made through the free subscribers as well. So it makes sense for both of them. But 100 million.
I think it's also better for people. I think it's better for people in general. I think YouTube get away with fucking murder. You know what I mean? When it comes to telling people or telling... Yeah, exactly. Just this whole it's like a mammy state where you can kind of tell people what to do or how to create fucking content or what they can and can't say because, I suppose this is outside the topic, but it's an interesting thing to talk about. Like, we saw this. If anyone follows what goes on with podcasters and shit on the internet, Alex Jones was a friend of is a friend of Joe Rogan's, and he's this outspoken fucking right-wing conspiracy theorist, basically.
Conspiracy theorist.
He is the conspiracy theorist. But some of what he says is very interesting, and actually a lot of the stuff that he said that people said was bollocks turned out to be true. He does say some mad shit, though. Interdimensional child molesters in the government is probably one of them that's a bit mental. But, like, he was completely...
And Pizzagate got people killed.
Exactly. Yeah. So when he was saying stuff like that, I think he said something about Sandy Hook, the school shooting being fake as well. Few things like that. Because you have to crack a few eggs to make an omelette. If he's trying to point out when things are fucking a bit moody or a bit sketchy, he's going to get it wrong some of the time. And he's caught a lot of flack for that. Fair enough. However, he was deplatformed by Twitter and he was deplatformed by YouTube because he was speaking out, and he speaks out against these companies because people don't even fucking realize. This is why I'm kind of a little bit anti-social media. It's because social media and tech companies are run by people, and those people have opinions, and anyone outside of their opinion that voices an opinion on their platforms usually gets fucking shut down. That's a big problem. And I think for Rogan, who's kind of a bit of a voice of reason in the world, especially for a lot of people, they're kind of like, he does give a lot of people a voice. And, you know, if you can't say certain things, it's just like, what the fuck are we doing? Why can't you say those things? Surely there's free speech, and if you're not hurting somebody, that you should be able to say something. I'm not talking about hurt someone's fucking feelings. Like, yeah, get over yourself. That's the problem with the world. Everyone's fucking feelings get hurt, and all of a sudden that's
and how many times has he said, or everyone has said, when they're streaming on or replaying on YouTube, oh no, don't play that, it will get us kicked off. Don't play that, it will get us kicked off YouTube. Don't
Exactly.
play that, it will get us kicked off YouTube. The algorithms are fucked. It's a broken system. It's actually not fixable as well, because you can either have computers, it's only because of the pure volume of content on it. You can either have computers that will pick up on things for copyright reasons, or you have people that do it, which is impossible with that amount of content going on. And then with the computers, they can't figure out what normal human eyes and ears can see. So, you know, I think it's a great move. Well done. Move on you go. I'm obviously going to start listening then more on Spotify.
Totally. Well, I think in the next 3 to 5 years, YouTube will obviously still be there, but you're probably going to see a lot more shit like this. I'm sorry to anyone that's not a big fucking podcast listener, but listen, like it's really, really, really important. This is something I feel very strongly on, that when you have an opinion, like especially companies of this size, like you don't hear, and maybe Fox News and shit like that does have an opinion, but when you're that big, like when you're as big as a fucking YouTube, like you're as big as a company as a YouTube or a Facebook or a Twitter, like really these platforms almost run the world in a way, because they control information. I'm getting a bit conspiracy, like they control information. Think about it. Like what is your consumption on a day-to-day basis of information? Guaranteed 95% of it is on one of those 3 platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, fucking Twitter, or YouTube. And Instagram's owned by Facebook. So it's like they could, if they have an opinion on things and they deliberately suppress anything that's against their opinion, even though that person has a right to say it, then what's going on here? Well, you got platforms that are only pushing one fucking agenda. You know, and it's like, I don't agree with their agenda. I don't want to particularly listen to it, and I resent the fact that I'm being told I have to, you know, I have to fall in line with what they fucking believe. It's like, no, I don't believe in what they believe, so why the fuck should I?
Yeah, because you don't have to.
Exactly. You know, so I think it's really important that fucking, you know, people aren't, someone like Rogan who's got that much power and leverage based on
who has
following.
more viewers. He's the most concurrent viewed media on the planet. So more people watch and listen to him than Fox, NBC, and BBC put together concurrently. So per day.
Jesus. Not surprising. Not surprising. Let's fucking. It is
because he's not aligned. He's not aligned. You know that way. So he'll have everybody, and you know. So fair play to him. Go on.
No, it's better. It's far better for
get that shmoney.
Exactly.
Enough.
100 mil. Anyway, guys, be responsible for it if you want it. That's today's episode. Something I feel very strongly on, and something I did a video on this with the chefs in the Elite earlier on in the week. I did a video called, if you take childlike or you take kiddie levels of responsibility, you're going to get kiddie level results. And if you take adult levels of responsibility, you're going to get adult results. That was the concept that I was talking about. And today's episode is along those lines. And it's about being responsible for something if you want it. So being responsible, owning the fucking thing, owning your life and owning your actions. That's what being responsible is. All right. The thing is changing your life, changing your lifestyle, sorting it out, you know, understanding. And again, if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, or you follow Chef Fit and you follow the messages and you've seen how it's developed over the past while, you'll see the common denominator is it's about getting your shit together if you're a chef. You know, it's about getting yourself together, and getting your shit together means something different for everyone. Some people it's losing a load of weight, changing your lifestyle. Some people it's about structuring your life so you improve your mental health. Some people it's about having accountability, having a support system. Some people it's about just having an guidance and an extra kick in the arse to get it done. Getting your shit together means something different for everyone, but ultimately, you know, you're going in the same direction. It's pulling yourself together. And you could have reasons for doing that. It could be for, you know, as I said, your own mental health. It could be to save your career, save your family, whatever the fuck it is. Okay, whatever the fuck it is. What I'm seeing and what Peter's seeing is that Chef Fit and people who do things like Chef Fit and the chefs that join, ultimately the end goal is to completely change how you're living your life so you have a different life. And we do that through lifestyle and community. Now, what I'm trying to say and what I want to get across to you, and the problem that I see, is that so many chefs, and this is not just a chef thing, it's a human thing, but I'm not talking about humans, I'm talking about chefs. What I see is that some chefs who come in don't ultimately take responsibility of the fact that they're there and the reasons for being there. They don't own that, so therefore they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't achieve it. And again, we've seen it. Me and Peter have seen this week in, week out for the past fucking near 2 years now at this point, where you see people who come in and they adopt the life straight away. And they're like, they understand that this is an important thing and it's an important endeavor that they're getting after. So if they know it's that important to them that they must make a change, well, fuck, I'm going to take responsibility of the fact that I need to change. So when it comes to excuses, like I don't have time, I don't have energy, I'm not motivated. When you are responsible for your result, right? When you're responsible for the result, you find a way around that problem. If I don't have time, I find a way to make time. If I don't have energy, I figure out why I don't have energy and I rectify that. If I don't, you know, whatever, fill in the fucking excuse, right? When you're responsible for what you're doing, you'll find a way around that. When you're not responsible for it, you'll just use it as an excuse. And ultimately, you got to understand that if you're using excuses on something that really means something for you and could change your life, that's not a good way to go. Okay? It's a natural human thing to do, but it's not the way to go. If you need to fucking sort your lifestyle out so you can be a better parent, like that's a worthwhile endeavor. If you keep saying you don't have time to do that, I call fucking bullshit. I call bullshit because I think you're being selfish there. And I think you need to put it in perspective.
Your priorities are up your hole if you're thinking that way.
Yeah. And it's something I say, like, man, it's scary common. Like, it's so common. So many people that we talk to that come into the program, you know, that's a pattern that happens the odd time. And it's just a lack of understanding and not knowing, basically, you know, of what the story is and not being aware. So I'll give you an example. All right, I'll give you an example. Responsibility. People kind of look at me like, what do you mean? You know, you think it's all in the program that you're doing. Like if Chef Fit doesn't work, it's Chef Fit's fault, for example. Like that's what people might commonly think. But why do some chefs come into Chef Fit and change their lives and some fail? Why does that happen? In my opinion, and what I know to be true, is that it's down to the level of responsibility they're willing to take for themselves and for their goal. Like, it's down to the level of responsibility. The chefs who succeed have very strong reasons for succeeding. They're like, well, I've got to fucking be there for the kids, or I've got to sort out my confidence levels, whatever your thing is. There's a strong reason for being there. And they fully understand that that they need to make it happen. And you need to step up. And you need to walk away from the old version of you to create a new version of you. I'll talk about that at the end of the episode. On the other side of that, the people who fail. The people who fail are the ones who say, oh, well, I need to do this and I need to do that. And they're complaining about all the problems they have, which is, you know, when you're pointing out a problem, you're complaining about it. I get that. But when you point out the problem, When it actually comes, you're saying, oh, I want to fix this. But when it actually comes time to go and fucking fix the thing and do the work required consistently, you'll go missing. And the difference is responsibility. And the example that I'll give you is that imagine, and I can't speak on this, Peter probably can, what happens to a person when they have a child? Like what switch gets flipped? Well, ultimately, if you're a fucking, an irresponsible person who just sits on their hole all day doing fuck all, and then all of a sudden you get someone pregnant and you have to have that kid, well, that forces you to take responsibility, and ultimately, for lack of a better term, get your shit together, son. It forces you to do it. And the reason that it forces you to do it is because if you don't take responsibility, the child is probably going to die. That's literally as literal as it is. Like, who's going to feed it? Who's going to wake up in the night and fucking change the nappy? Like, who's going to do that? You have to do it if it's your child. You're forced into a position where you must take responsibility. And that's why you'll probably hear a lot of people say after a couple of months having a kid, oh, fucking, it completely changed. And it's like, yes, absolutely. Because there's something in that process, because you're forced to take ownership of something, right? It gives you a purpose and it gives you a drive. And that purpose and that drive will then lead you to do great things. So, like, a great thing, and probably something that's overlooked in society, is having a great family. I think it's a very, very, very respectable endeavor for people to raise a family the proper way. Have kids, raise them with fucking integrity, raise them to be good human beings. Like, that's that's something that's very overlooked today. A lot of kids aren't fucking raised in a way where they're given that bit of principle and that level of integrity. So that's purpose, that's drive. And when you're put into that position, you're forced to rise to the occasion, because there isn't really another option. Like, you're not going to let a child die because you're not bothered getting your fucking shit in gear, unless you're a fucking mongo, unless you're a piece of shit coach, which there's probably a handful out there. But for the most part, people get their shit together. So that's what I'm saying about responsibility. And Peter can potentially attest to this. As he came into ChefFit, obviously there was reasons, and maybe there's surface level reasons, but something happens deep down that's quite powerful. Through the process of him joining, taking responsibility for where he was going, and taking responsibility of his actions and his patterns and his habits and changing those, right? All of a sudden, he's like, right, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is on me now. I need to do the fucking work. That's a very empowering moment, because that gives you purpose. For men especially, like, if you're, obviously there's female chefs, they listen to this, it's important for you as well. For a lot of men, like, we have a lot of, let's say 74% of suicides are male. And we can look at some external factors, but really a lot of the time, that's down to the fact that majority of men in a modern day sense don't really have purpose. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't know what the fucking reason is for being here in general. Because if I was to take you back fucking 2,000 or 3,000 years ago to hunter-gatherer times, if I asked you what your purpose was, you'd know exactly what the purpose was. Your purpose is to go out and fucking hunt the fucking animals, bring the food back, go and cut the tree down, bring back for firewood. Like, your purpose is keeping the tribe alive. You have a role there to play, okay? That responsibility that you have is your purpose. The responsibility is your purpose. If you have no responsibility and you have a kid, the kid becomes your purpose. If you need to change your life, well, taking responsibility of that change is your purpose. So if you're lost and you don't really, you can't be found, and you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and your life feels chaotic, and there's nothing to fucking live for, and all of these things that we find ourselves saying, well, I would ask you what your purpose is. And if you don't have a purpose, the answer to that is usually, it's not always, but it's usually going to be, well, take responsibility of something that's worthwhile doing. Take responsibility of something that you know in your heart of hearts needs to be done. And for a lot of chefs, because you're in that chef life fucking mode, you end up with a shitload of bad habits and a very unhealthy way of living your life. And that can have a knock-on effect down the line, where you're either depressed, fucking anxious, your relationship is suffering, you're not being a role model for your kids, whatever problem you're facing, It's like throughout the conditioning you've had as a chef, it's led you to be in the shit, and then it's affected things in your life in a negative way. Taking responsibility of the fact that you need to fix that is probably, you might think that's really difficult and you might resent me for saying you need to do it, but it's probably the most empowering thing you can do in your life. Probably the most empowering thing. Fucking see it all the time. See it all the time.
You know, like very early on in Chef Fit, I did have that eureka moment, and it's funny you should say it is very akin to becoming a father for the first time, because you do feel a new responsibility within yourself, but it's not just for yourself, it's for the most important people around you, which was my wife and 2 kids. You know, when you were going on about accountability and responsibility, that was, you know, they were the core things you were drilling home at the very start, you know. And it wasn't about health and fitness and getting stronger. It was about building these core structures from the very, very beginning. And without me like knowing about these particularly before that, and running blind the way I had been going, then that wouldn't have worked out the way it did for me. Like, you know, you have most of the people that come into Chef Fit, their main thing is they say, I need to get my shit together. That's what you always hear. I need to get my shit together. And then you would have a load of people that at the start you go, right, he or she is going to succeed, because they'll say, I joined Chef Fit because I need to get my shit together. And then they follow up straight away with, I know what needs to be done. I just need to be shown how to do it.
Yeah.
And that would set people apart. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there are people that come in and they just put their hand out, and you take them by the hand, you walk them in, you say, right, like, this is you now. This can be you. In order to get from here to here, you need to do this. And at the end of the day, it is on you. You know, that, okay, as you're saying, that responsibility, it all comes down to you. If you succeed, okay, it is because of yourself. If you fail, it's because of yourself. There's so many people within Chef Fit that you have all different levels of success, consistency. You've just got so many winners pushing through all the time that it's clear to see to you almost straight away when joining Chef Fit that once you say, right, this is where I am now, that's where I want to be, I'm going to take ownership, I'm going to be responsible for me now, show me what I need to do. So if you are a sponge and you say, right, here's what you need to do, and they go, right, Grant, I can take this and I can run with it.
Yeah.
And that's when I myself went into the next level of who I was and who I was going to be. Do you know what I mean?
Big time. And I think through that process, I think you discovered a good amount of self-awareness, like anyone does. Do you know what I mean? Like, you become aware, like maybe when you joined at first, or maybe you applied to join, again, you come in, as any human being does, you come in for the surface reasons, and it's like, right, well, I need to get myself in shape. I want to, I need more confidence in myself. I don't like how I look, or I want to get better at this, or I want to get better at that, which are all good intentioned things. But as you develop within that role, and as you start, I suppose you become more aware as a person, and it's hard to tell what makes you more aware as a person, but somewhere along in the process, you become more aware. And I think you did it the same way I had this fucking coming of age moment of just kind of going, oh yeah, this isn't just about like my fitness or my health. This is about me operating at a way, as you know what I mean, operating how I need to operate. The whole idea of like being productive, like waking up, getting shit done, getting your exercise in, taking care of yourself, treating yourself with self-respect, living a structured, disciplined lifestyle. Over time, like at the beginning, that might seem like a waste of time. You don't really understand why it's important. You don't really understand why it's important. And I guarantee you the same people that don't know why that's important are the same ones that have gone into lockdown, right, when COVID hit, and those are the ones that are sitting on their hole, scratching their head, going, this is fucking shit. I feel terrible. I'm sitting in the gaff with the family and I'm getting fucking nothing done. I feel like shit. And it's like, the truth is, you haven't yet developed the self-awareness to know how important your fucking lifestyle and your structure is. Because every action you take, like let's say if you have as I said, that worthwhile endeavor, changing your life is a fucking worthwhile endeavor, whether you're doing it to save your own life through mental health, whether you're doing it to drastically improve your confidence so you can go on and achieve things, whether you're doing it for your family, you know, that worthwhile endeavor. Fuck, I had a really good point there. And it just literally, pew,
I'll tell you another thing with me was I was always a people person, like really outgoing. And, you know, if you put me and 99 people into a room, I guarantee it, I would be the one that would be, you know, doing the rounds in the room. I would be the helper, the conversation starter, and I always like to help people. But before Chef Fit, I didn't have a way. Again, this was subconsciously. I didn't have a way of helping people because I didn't know who wanted to be helped. So I was just like this nice guy kind of thing, you know, that way. Then I was put into an environment of hundreds of people since then, who are in all different stages where I have been in the last 20 years. And I've been given the tools and the people to help. Yeah. And that was very early on where I felt that, you know what I mean? And then you invested the time in me for that. And that's the way that's shut up that way. And that was because, again, I said, right, that's where I want to be next. Yeah. And you said, right, if you want to be there, then this is what you have to do. And now that path was laid out. Like.
And I also think that you were, you know, you mightn't be that aware of it yourself, but I think you were very much ready for that without really knowing it outright. As I said, it's a subconscious thing. I think once we opened the curtain and you were like, no, Peter, like here's fucking, you know, here's our principles, let's say, and, you know, here's the responsibility within the group. I think you took to that like a fish to water, because I think subconsciously you were ready.
I think it suited me.
Yeah. You hadn't been exposed to it yet, but you were definitely ready for it. And going back to that point that I was saying, you know, that example of someone who's not aware that responsibility is important, yet you're sitting at home during lockdown pulling your fucking hair out, like there's a problem there. And the problem is you're not taking responsibility. And because you're not taking responsibility, you don't have any purpose. And understanding that our actions, like let's say in that, okay, right, I need to change my life for whatever reason. Cool. Well, all your positive lifestyle actions are feeding into creating a new version of yourself. And all those shitty, ill-disciplined decisions are leading into you building the old version of you, which didn't make you happy in the first place. So you got to understand that by taking responsibility, it gives you purpose. And when you have a purpose, you take the correct actions. And when you take those correct actions, it builds you into a new person. And that's why, if it's important to do, you should take responsibility of it, and you should fucking own that thing, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I say to myself, and probably one of the biggest things that any of us have experienced, like you probably had this, the lieutenants in the group had this, when we all read a book called Extreme Ownership. I talk about ownership so much, literally based on the book by Jocko Willink, a Navy SEAL commander, an absolute machine of a man, basically took the leadership principles that they learned fighting in Ramadi in Iraq and how they can be applied into life and business or whatever. It can be applied into anything. And this whole idea of ownership is so powerful to people. And Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. The idea of ownership and responsibility is so powerful because it is your purpose, you know? And it can, in that process, when you're sitting on your hole, it looks like it's the fucking hardest thing in the world. Fuck, why would I be, you know, I don't have time or I don't have energy. Well, it's like, man, if you keep saying you don't have time, you don't have energy, like that's the thing that you should be doing. The mountain to climb. That's a human fucking like narrative. There's like, go to the fucking dragon's lair, slay the dragon, get the gold. That's not easy. And that's what life is. It's fucking hard. And you have to take responsibility, the fact that it is hard, and you have to carry through with it anyway. Because in that process, you fucking find yourself. Take responsibility, do something hard, and go and fucking make your best effort at it. That's the process you need to go through. Because every human being expects, and we live in a world right now where everything's made so fucking easy for us, right? That we can kind of float. We can float in life. But because we're floating and not really doing anything difficult or worthwhile, we're lost and we're like, oh, I don't like my fucking, I have nothing, like I have no purpose, or, you know, I'm lost right now, or I don't have any direction. The reason that you don't have any direction is because you're not doing something that fulfills you and is worthwhile, and you're operating within your comfort zone. And the comfort zone is where you die. Comfort zone is where you die. And that's why we have so many fucking soy boys these days. You know, that's why we're losing, obviously, you know, fucking gender equality is definitely a thing these days, and it's something that's been improved. But I don't think that because you bring females up to a level that you have to drop the good aspects of what a man is. I don't believe in that. I think you can have equality across the board. I think what people think masculinity is and what a man is they only see like a wolf whistling asshole who doesn't give a fuck about anyone that's riding all over the place. That's not a man. That's not what masculinity is. Like being true to yourself, having fucking integrity, being responsible for your family, being strong for people around you. That's what being a man is. And somewhere along the lines in modern day society, we're losing that. We're losing that because you've got fucking, you know, ads are on OnlyFans, Instagram, fucking, like everything is so easy for them. You don't have to go and work for shit anymore. So you're kind of losing that purpose. As I said before, the thing you're looking to find is found in the place you don't want to look. You're lost right now. Cool. Go and do something extremely hard that means something to you and fucking fight that battle and try and win it. And that's where you're going to find your purpose again. That's where you're going to find your drive. So to answer anyone's question or query, you might be thinking this subconsciously. You might even fucking realize it. You mightn't even realize it. But if you're feeling lost right now, I guarantee you that's where it's stemming from. Guaranteed. You know, guaranteed. And you might think sometimes that work is the be all and end all. And I think a lot of chefs are so, I suppose, conditioned to, oh, well, fucking cooking's my life, which in a lot of cases I think is bollocks, to be honest. I think that's bollocks. I think for a lot of chefs, it's your income and it's your job. Mm-hmm. But
if you say cooking is your life, then you are, what I hear is I'm a fool making money for somebody else. That's what I hear. Except for the 0.1% of people who make their own millions out of it.
Yeah. Like people on episodes of Chef's Table, for example. It's like, you know, it's a different tier. People doing something at a different level. But like for the majority of chefs who listen to this podcast, like your day-to-day, you might love cooking, you might love your team, you love the adrenaline of the service or whatever you get, the positive things that you get out of that. Okay, great. But on the other side of that, you're also doing something that is negatively affecting your lifestyle and, you know, really causing a lot of upset in your life because you're doing too much of it and potentially you're not in the right place. Whatever. You can fool yourself into thinking that that's your life and that's only your life. And anything outside of that kind of isn't your life. And I would argue the opposite. Peter's a chef for fucking 20 years. But I'd say he feels more focused and purposeful in the last 2 years since he really, I suppose, dialed back the work hours and tried to find something more sustainable for himself and really focused on himself and really got himself to a good place, fitness-wise, mentally, habits, ways living his life, ways structuring it. You know, whereas Peter's going, well, fucking, do you know what I mean? Like, chefing's the only thing for me and fuck everything else, which is kind of a mentality that you see. You know, it's like, nah, man, I don't buy that. You know, I really don't buy that.
I'm a father and a husband and a man, my own man first before any of that. And all that's a means to an end, I'd say.
And there's no problem with being massively passionate about what you're doing within your career, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you're a young chef that's pushing on and wants to achieve big things in their career, absolutely, like rock on. Maybe that is your purpose. Maybe that is your drive, and taking responsibility of that is going to give your life a lot of direction. But in a lot of cases, I don't see that. In a lot of cases, what I see is chefs who are kind of stuck in a rut, who are breaking their bollocks without really yielding much from that. You know, you're doing all the long hours, you're still working in the same role that you were before. Person you're working for is operating on really thin fucking margins, so they're probably understaffed. Like, it's not as if you're not climbing the ladder, let's say. You're existing in a job as a chef. And when you're existing in a job as a chef, the thing to say to yourself is not, well, this is just my life and this is my only purpose and fuck everything else. The idea is to go, okay, cool. Well, can I get this workable and manageable? And then can I focus on myself as well? Because I'd probably be a lot happier if I had a part of myself that I could focus on. That's the key. And with that in mind, and you understand that now, what's the process for sorting this out? I always say, in the training I did the other day for the chefs in the group, was the first couple of months is like riding a bike with stabilizers. And what we're specifically talking about is making a massive lifestyle change. Let's say you join something like chef, and let's say you try and go it alone and you're trying to sort yourself out. It's like riding a bike with stabilizers for the first while. And when you're riding a bike with stabilizers, you have to stay super, super committed to riding that bike in order to eventually take the stabilizers off. And if you're not 100% committed to riding the bike with stabilizers and getting good with that, then you're never going to be able to ride a bike without them. That's a really key thing to say. When you start off, there's a very good chance that you're not massively disciplined. You don't have good habits. You don't have routines built for yourself. You don't have all these good rituals around your lifestyle. So you're going to have to fucking put in the work to build that. You're going to have to put in the work to build that. You're going to have to put in the work to stay consistent and just keep showing up and keep showing up. But eventually what happens after a couple of months is you can take the stabilizers off and you become a self-sufficient person. You become someone who fucking is able to, right, I remain disciplined by default. I mean, even though some weeks I mightn't be great, I'm still default disciplined to a certain extent. I still train a couple of times a week, even on my worst weeks. Like that's becoming self-reliant. And I call that going from red pill into blue pill. You become a fucking better version of yourself with all these habits built. The way I'd describe it, if anyone's watched the Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix, I wouldn't be a massive basketball fan, but I find it interesting looking at these. I find it interesting looking at a freakish winner. That's what I find interesting. Someone who's just so fucking like a McGregor, a fucking, a Mike Tyson, a Michael Jordan, these kinds of people who are just extreme winners. And, looking at what they do behind the scenes, and what freaked me out about Michael Jordan, and I was probably a bit young when he was on his rise, when he was at his peak. Like I not only did I not watch basketball, I just wasn't alive at that time in the fucking late 80s, early 90s. And what I saw, Peter there. What? I was in fucking I was alive, folks, but I wasn't fucking watching basketball.
I was a teenager in the 90s.
Yeah. What freaked me out.
God damn it.
Jesus, lads. Yeah, the old Homer
There's still
Simpson
a little bit of colour here, look.
Stop, Paul. Stop.
A little bit of colour here. It's a darker grey.
It's silver, folks. Silver, yeah. So what I noticed about these freak winners and what Michael Jordan was doing, like I know I used to play sport to not anywhere near that level, but I used to play sport to a decent level. And I was trying to chase a career as a professional rugby player when I was a fucking, teenager becoming an adult. And after that, I became competitive in powerlifting, got pretty good at it, but not even anywhere near in competition to that level. And it's trying to identify why. And the reason why is because I didn't own everything in my life at the time. Like when I was trying to play rugby, I was a fucking young guy, and I wasn't fucking taking ownership of what the fuck I was doing. Like I wanted to be a professional player, but was I doing everything I should have been doing to become a professional player? Fuck no. Had injuries, didn't rehab them properly. On days off, I wouldn't do the extra recovery, or I wouldn't do the extra cardio session because I was showing up when I was told to show up, and that was enough for me. But ultimately, because I wasn't putting in the extra fucking yards, because it wasn't down to me, in my opinion, it was down to the coaches telling me what to do, because that was my mindset, I failed ultimately. And then I think about someone like Michael Jordan, and there was this story where people don't even know this. The lad he stopped playing basketball in 1993, and he went and started playing professional baseball, which is just mental. but he was kind of describing the mindset of how he played baseball at school, and in such a short amount of time, he went from like being fairly shit to very, very, very fucking good. And that's because he knew that he needed to be the best at anything that he did. So therefore, you show up before the fucking training to practice something, you do the training, and you stay after the training to practice something. And it's not about being a fucking lunatic all the time, but it's understanding that if you are responsible for achieving something, you have to be willing to do the fucking work. Not even. If you're responsible for achieving something, you probably will take the actions where other people won't take the actions. Whereas if you put it down to someone else, you won't do it. And when you start something like Sheffield, you start a lifestyle change, the big mistake is someone will make when they're not truly responsible for themselves is they'll say, after a week, once they fucking give up on the diet, once you give up on your exercise, you'll say, oh, well, that diet didn't work for me. Or, oh, I don't have time because of work. Or, oh, I don't have this because of this. Or, I can't do that because of this. And the reality is, you could if you were more responsible. And if you were more responsible, you'd be more successful. But the reality is, you keep failing because you're not willing to take that responsibility. And therefore, you're not willing to take the fucking actions. Everyone wants to be a beast until it's time to do what a beast does, which is the fucking hard yards, you know, the shit behind the scenes, the stuff you don't see. And that's the fucking truth. That is the truth. So it's not that you have to be Michael Jordan, but you have to understand what's happening there. The only difference between him and others is where he's at in his mind. And because of where he's at in his mind, he's willing to do what others aren't willing to do. So when
if he had a chose to be fucking a script, right, like a JavaScript computer programmer, he would have been the world's greatest JavaScript computer programmer. That's the way he was wired, you know.
Exactly.
The fact that he was big and strong and athletic meant that he leaned towards that, but he would have succeeded no matter what he did because he has that champion's mentality, that winner's mentality, and that go the extra mile mentality. Did I ever tell you, I don't know if I said this on the podcast before, but I know, so I know the Dublin goalkeeper who is the world's greatest goalkeeper of all time, his taxi driver, right? So he works as a teacher as well, right? With Stephen Cluxton, he's a maths teacher. Right. And every morning at 5:15, this taxi driver, who's a friend of my uncle's, goes and picks him up from his house and brings him to the training ground, where he goes and for an hour and a half before he goes to do his normal job. For those who don't know, GA players are amateur athletes. They all have their jobs outside of being the best athletes in the country. He goes down for 6 o'clock to his training ground and he takes free kicks for an hour and a half. And then the taxi driver comes back and picks him up, drops him off to the school. When he's finished his work at 4 o'clock, the taxi driver picks him up, brings him back down to the training ground, and he kicks free kicks on the halfway line for another hour and a half. And none of this is during the Dublin GAA training time.
Mad.
And because he does that, he is the greatest that there ever has been.
Right.
You know, he was told, right, you're a great goalkeeper. You could kick the ball long. We'll make, you know, you should do that. And then he went and he joined the team. I don't know who he played for, it's Chemical Crokes or whoever it was. But he also chose, because he wanted to be, he was already the best. But in order for him to become the greatest of all time, he's putting in that extra 3 hours every single day. That's that same type of mentality that Michael Jordan had, that David Beckham and Ronaldo, they also famously turned up 2 hours early for training every single day, and they were the last ones to leave the training ground.
But the thing is, with that, like we did an episode on this recently called What's Your Why? And, you know, you're only going to take responsibility of something when it really means something. You know, like you understand, we've talked about why responsibility is important. Like any of those people that you just mentioned, what's the reason for doing it in the first place? Well, the reason is to be the fucking best to do it, to be the best in the world. That's a very, very, very high, like that's a very worthwhile endeavor. Like that's something, and just genuinely, there's no point in doing something without, like if you don't have a strong reason for doing something, fucking forget about it. Forget about it. You might say you want to do it, but you won't do it. when you're saying you want to be the greatest of all time at something, that's a worthwhile endeavor that you're going to work very fucking hard for. That's going to drive you forward and light that fire. But I would also argue, taking it back to chefs, that it's like, what's a more worthwhile endeavor than saving your own fucking life? Do you know what I mean? Like,
especially as a father or a mother.
Yeah, like as a parent, or as someone who wants to be a parent, or as a leader, whether you're in a kitchen, there's so many different situations and scenarios, but there's so many of them that are worthwhile. Like, that's the whole thing about Chef It, and kind of digging its layers deep. It's not just the fitness side of things, and that's why we talk about this, because if you just focus on the fitness, like that, people don't really see that. Like, what's the thing that's driving you towards that is the fucking focus. So have it, like, reflect, like, have a think to yourself. Why do you need to change? Why? Like, ask that question. People come to me, like, I used to personal train people. I used to sit down with them in person, right? And they used to come in and I'd consult them. And it's like, what's your goal? Oh, I want to lose a bit I want to fucking, I want to tone up here, and they'd fucking grab the old bingo wings. And it's just like, okay, I get that, but why? And they hadn't even thought about it. They don't even know why. I just want to feel a bit better. And I'd keep keep asking, no, like, tell me why. What's having no bingo wings going to do for you? Eventually, by asking that question over and over and over again, you're going to dig below the surface, and eventually you'll get to an answer like, I've always been self-conscious, I've always had this problem since I was a kid, I've no confidence in myself, I fucking actually hate myself when I look at myself in the mirror. You'd hear shit like that, and it's like, okay, do you think that's a worthwhile thing to fix? Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about feeling a bit better about yourself, it's actually about addressing a fucking problem that you've had since you were a child. That's why you're doing the fitness, and that's something worth taking responsibility of. If it's the parenting or the role modeling, that's another massive driver. Like, I've spoken to chefs who literally don't get off the couch outside of work. They won't get off the couch. I was talking to a guy about a year ago, and it was actually quite sad because he never did anything about it. He never did anything about the situation. He was nearly broke down into tears because he kept saying he just tells his kids that he can't play with them. I'm too tired today. Guy was like 24 stone, sitting on the couch, just drinking bottles of Coke, drinking fucking cans, like eating shit. 3 kids there sitting with him, and just not once would he ever get up and do something about it. And even when it came time to do something, he still didn't do something about it. And it's like, that guy had a very strong reason for needing to change, but he didn't take responsibility of the fact that he needed to do it. So therefore he never did it. So there's 2 sides to that equation. You've got to find a reason for doing something, and then you got to take responsibility of that fucking reason. That's this episode in a nutshell. Like, dig deeper. Why? Why do you need to change? Not everyone needs to change. Why do you need to change? Why do you need to fucking do something? Find that reason, take responsibility of it, and that becomes your fucking purpose in life. That becomes your drive. That will get you out of the shit. That will get you out of the dark place you're in, because you're on the attack and you're pushing your life in the right direction, as opposed to just wallowing in your comfort zone and nothing really happening. That's what I'm saying. And that's why we talked about all those famous sports stars, because they have strong reasons for doing it and they're responsible for fucking getting it done. You need to be the same. Adopt that identity, adopt that fucking mindset, and I guarantee you things will improve massively. Everybody
has the motivation. What you need is the drive. Exactly. I promise I won't say motivation and drive next episode, but it always boils down to it, because they had the motivation. They wanted to be the greatest of all time. Anybody can have the motivation. Everybody has that motivation of, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to get my shit together. But in order to achieve that, you have to have the drive to accept, first of all, where you are and why you are where you are, and then what you need to do to move forward. And if you have the drive, then you can accomplish that. The motivation is always going to be there, because everybody can do better.
Yeah.
Like a lot of chefs that are coming into Chef It, they can lose weight. They can get into a better headspace. That's why they're here. So the motivation is there. But the difference between the people that succeed and don't succeed is the drive.
Exactly.
And that means they're actually going to do it, and that they will achieve it if they do have that.
The fire, yeah, 100%.
The fire, yeah,
100%.
big time, and
But
the
then
aggression. Do you know what I mean? And the
urgency.
unselfish, the unselfish selfishness. Where it's like, right, no, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to do this for me, because if I do this for me, I'm going to become a better chef, a better father, a better husband, a better human, and everybody around me is going to benefit from that.
Exactly.
But you're not going to get that if you're sitting in a hole, and you're not going to get that as well if you don't stand up. If you don't put your hand up and go, right, this is, I'm not in that place right now. I'm not in a good place,
Yeah, exactly. Being honest with yourself, reflecting, being honest with yourself, and then fucking being honest with those around you by pushing it forward, guys. That's literally what it is about. And if you're looking to find that fire and that purpose in your life, like, re-listen to this episode if
Be
need be.
responsible for it if you want it.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone's interested in actually pursuing what we're talking about here, get in contact with our Facebook page or Instagram page, shoot us a message, and we'll get you off to the races there. If you're interested in joining the Chef Fit tribe, in terms of this podcast, like it, subscribe to it, share it on your social media platforms, please, as much as humanly possible, and tag a chef that needs to hear us. We need you guys to support as much as possible to help us get this message out there. And obviously, if you are listening to it, you benefit from it. I guarantee other chefs will benefit as well. All right?
Yeah.
Guys, that episode 60. Petey, good shit, bro.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Catch us in the next one. Stay safe.
Yeah!